Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review and rant on the 2009 horror film Hit and Run. Now, before I go any further sharing my thoughts on this film, I would like to give a special shout out to Antonio for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you'd like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your requests as soon as I possibly can. Now, Hit and Run is one of those films that has pretty much been relegated to obscurity. And after seeing it, I can see why, and I think it should stay there. Like, this is the kind of movie that I think is deserving of being left on the side of the cinematic highway to rot because it's roadkill. This movie is bad. Now, it's not the kind of bad that is like one of the worst films I've ever seen, but it's still a bad movie with a bad script, bad directing, and it's just a bad film. It's one of those movies where there's somewhat of an interesting concept, maybe a different take on something like the Hitchhiker segment from Creepshow 2, but it's so badly executed that it hurts. So it's directed by a guy named uh, Enda McCallion. And prior to this, he directed a music video for Nine Inch Nails. And according to him, he was given the job to direct the Doom movie. I don't necessarily buy that, but okay, I'll take his word for it. He eventually got fired, and after seeing this film, I think it was for a good reason. I definitely don't think he would have done a good job. I think he would have fucked it up. This film was shot and completed and in the can and ready to go in 2007, and it didn't get a release until 2 years later. So that's saying quite a bit if you ask me. Um, if this was a film that was honestly any good, more than likely it would have gotten a release a lot earlier. But it languished and sat there until somebody decided to pick it up. Like somebody decided to, take care of the roadkill that was left rotting on the side of the road, and they were tired of looking at it, so they decided to pick it up and put it in the back of their pickup, and then, throw it away and dispose of it in some other capacity. Um, that's really what happened with this. But instead of disposing it, they decided to take it home and keep it, or make a taxidermy puppet out of it, and then do a whole puppet show in front of everybody. That's really what happened with this movie. And the direction, it's one of those films where the director is trying to be very artsy. He's doing a lot of different film techniques, using a lot of different angles and zooms and pans and POVs and all this other sort of stuff. And I appreciate the effort, and I do think that there is some skill that is showcased here, but it's so unfocused, it's so much in disarray that it just really winds up being more of a distraction than anything else. It's not really anything where like, oh, that's a cool shot. Most of the time it's like, why did he decide to randomly switch to this kind of technique? Why are we doing a POV shot of somebody inside of a refrigerator looking at the lead girl? Why are we doing this? Why is there a POV shot of somebody peeping through the peephole? Might as well be the poop hole. It should be. Why is there a POV shot of somebody peeping through the poop hole? Because that's where this movie resides, in the poop hole. Uh, that's where the director pulled out a lot of his ideas. As well as the screenwriters. But it's just one of those things where I'm just like, why is this happening? Why are we doing these weird random shifts in terms of the camera work? At times it works, like when it's trying to put you in the shoes of Mary and really making you feel her paranoia and her anxiety, or when it's trying to do the whole surreal nightmare ish sort of stuff where you have like waking nightmares, hallucinations, not knowing what's real and what's not, or stuff like when Emser, the guy who was hit by Mary, when he decides to just completely lose his mind and goes on a killing spree and starts it by kidnapping Mary and ties her to the bumper of her Jeep and then steals her Jeep and then drives it around town, drives around the highway. Like the way that the camera was set up there, it did a pretty good job making the whole sequence of events be a little more unsettling, be more intense. But there's a lot of moments though where the direction just needed to chill. The director needed to just chill and just direct the sequence normally. I think less is more when it comes to this kind of direction, unless you're doing something along the lines of Crank or some of those kind of movies. But this isn't one of those films, and this isn't one of those cases, because there's a lot of moments, like for the first hour, where you don't have anything that really warrants that kind of direction. So I think there should have been a better balance that was maintained when it comes to this kind of stylish, artsy direction versus just normal, level, just straight direction that's not necessarily flat, but it's not all over the place. It's just consistent. It's solid. This film is a prime example of how you can have ambitious and interesting and creative camera work, and if it's not utilized properly, it's just as detrimental to a film as direction that is just flat or amateurish or just incompetent. And speaking of amateurish and incompetent, that leads to my thoughts on this script by Diane Doniol Valcroze and Arthur K. Flam. So the story deals with this girl named Mary, and Mary is with her girls at a bar. She gets too drunk. She's plastered, and she decides to drink and drive. It seems like everything's okay because all that's happened is she's just embarrassingly slurring and singing along to uh, uh, the song "Float On" by Modest Mouse. But then she drives off the road. She thinks she hits something on the road and doesn't really think it's anything, bad. Thinks it's just a bump in the road, and it causes her to careen off into the woods. But after she recovers from her blackout night of drinking and she goes into the garage the same night, she finds a hit and run victim. And the hit and run victim starts acting weird and tries to kill her and starts attacking her. And then she retaliates by hitting the hit and run victim with a golf club. She thinks that she killed him, understandably so, because she hit him multiple times in the head with a golf club. So now she's freaking out. And she does a rash and stupid and impulsive thing and then decides to bury his body in the woods. And like for the first hour or so of this film, the story is just a boring Lifetime original movie drama of the week with a little bit more blood involving this hit and run victim and Mary and how she's dealing with it emotionally and the aftermath, and then her trying to get her boyfriend Rick to help her cover up the crime because she screwed up and buried the guy with her own blanket, so then they can tie the fibers to her and then she'll go to jail. And all of this could have been avoided if she just didn't, drink and drive, or if she just called the police and just suffered the consequences. All right, take the fall, you know, suffer the consequences for your actions, get a large fine, serve jail time, or get community service or something. Why even go this route to begin with? You could even say like, yeah, I was drunk and I hit him and he was on the bumper of the car and I didn't notice it until later and I'm sorry. But then he tried to attack me and then I hit him with a golf club. It's like, what was she supposed to do? Let him attack her? Let him like basically kill her? No. And so you have this boring drama for the first hour where you're just waiting for the horror to start. And it finally starts when she goes back to the woods for like what feels like the third time, try to get the blanket. but she's looking for her boyfriend, but her boyfriend is missing. And then she digs up what she thinks is the body of this missing elementary school teacher, Emser, but it happens to be her boyfriend who's now dead and is buried in the same spot. And they're like, okay, all right. This is where you get into the supernatural stuff. Like, okay, the guy did die, but now he's a revenant. He's trying to get revenge or something, right? No, apparently, this guy survived multiple blunt force trauma blows to the head with a golf club and managed to also dig his way out of the wet mud and find his ass back to town. And not only that, this Emser guy is in the middle of a psychotic episode, which is why he was trying to attack her, why he was randomly in the woods, because he didn't decide not to take his meds anymore and started having an episode. And I'm like, these writers have no idea how episodes work. Because after this, he's going around and he's acting like he's Jason Voorhees at some point later on in the finale. Before that, he's cognizant and mentally aware enough to play mind games with Mary, calling her on the phone, saying, Mary had a little lamb, and leaving clues and leaving hints and stalking her and doing all of this other stuff. If somebody's in the middle of a manic episode, they're not going to be, able to do that because they're not all there. And it's just this manic episode is just conveniently only there when the writers want it to be. And that's not how manic episodes work. So he's inconsistently manic. He kidnaps Mary, ties her up with Christmas lights to the bumper of her Jeep, steals her Jeep, drives around the highway in town for a while with her strapped to it, and he's driving full speed. Then he snaps out of his psychosis enough to try to go back home, but it's very brief because then something eventually causes him to get triggered again, and then he winds up killing his wife. Oh, and prior to that, he killed an innocent gas station attendant by drowning him with gasoline. So this is also a point where the writers are trying to make you sympathize with the school teacher, Emser, when it comes to what happened to him, but then they fuck it up by having him kill an innocent gas station attendant and then kill his wife. And then after that, now he's like Jason Voorhees. Like, I guess the manic episode that this guy has now is some kind of schizophrenic thing where now instead of him thinking that he's Jesus fucking Christ, he thinks that he's Jason fucking Voorhees. And now he's like hard to kill, won't go down for the count. He's also having yet again moments of clear and utter clarity where he's able to use a welding torch to burn off the bumper of the car with the girl still on it and try to bury her with her dead boyfriend. And then she saves herself by stabbing him in the eye with an extension cord. But then all of a sudden, the guy is able to keep on ticking even after that, after getting hit by a car, after getting hit in the head with a golf club, stabbed in the eye. The guy's still shambling around, still coming like he's Jason Voorhees or that fucking guy from the Hatchet films, and he's standing there in the middle of the road, and then Mary runs his ass over multiple times, and they're like, okay, all right, this has got to be it, right? Okay, she killed him, it's done, the movie's over. She'll drive off, go to the auto shop, get her Jeep fixed, the horror is over, till we have some bullshit quick cut where, oh no, is he dead or is he not? No, but instead they do this nonsense where she goes to the body shop to get her Jeep fixed, and then all these onlookers and these other mechanics that are there are all looking around the Jeep and looking on the ground. She looks over, and the Emser's body has been dragged or has been pulled from underneath the Jeep because she's been dragging it the entire time. And I'm like, at this point, she wasn't drunk anymore because she'd been sober for at least a couple of days because she was not drinking because of everything that happened. And because of that, she would have noticed that she was dragging this guy underneath her Jeep more than likely. Also, How the hell can she drag this guy under her Jeep for so long? Go from out of the woods all the way back into town up to the auto body shop. How the hell did she even manage to accomplish that feat? How did this corpse cling on to the bottom of the Jeep for that long? What? Did Emser also decide to preemptively cover himself in super glue just in case? Just so he could at least stick himself to the underside of the Jeep? I don't understand how this is even remotely possible to begin with. And there's a lot of things that undermine this too. The state of the Jeep is different than what it was the night of the supposed accident. It looks exactly the same as it did after she ran him over. And that, the second time, after he somehow survived his injuries and was now crazy and trying to kill her. And you're like, okay, so it looks like it's different, but you're trying to insinuate that it's the same Jeep that happened when she hit him initially? Are you trying to insinuate that this moment when they find his body under the Jeep is the day after she hit him after her night of drinking? Is that what you're trying to establish and insinuate here? If that's the case, it's a bullshit ending, because now this character who's been through hell, has been through enough, in all honesty, after making a mistake, and she screwed up. Should not have been drinking and driving. But it's not one of those things where you're like, yeah, she deserves to go to jail for the rest of her life. She deserves to lose her mind. Because that's what happens. She gets arrested and she snaps mentally. That's the ending of the movie. And so that's one ending, which sucks. The other ending is that everything that happened beforehand was just a dream, which is also messed up. So there's no version of this ending which is satisfying. She either gets arrested and goes crazy, and all the stuff that happened beforehand actually happened, or it never happened to begin with, and then it's just completely pointless and just not even worth your time. So it's like, what in the hell were the writers doing here? And it gets worse because there's a whole moment. It's a brief moment, but it's definitely there. I'm not making this shit up. There's a moment in the film when the story is taking place at Emser's house, where all of a sudden the camera is now focusing on Emser's phone, and it's now bleeding. Like it's possessed by the ghost of Amityville or some shit. And I'm like, why is the phone bleeding? What? And then that's never explained. There's also other moments where Mary's having quick flash cut hallucinations of Emser from scenes you see later on in the movie. So it's like, okay, was she just crazy? Is that what this all is? It's all a nightmare that she's having after her blackout night of drinking in the back of the Jeep? And then her going up to the auto body shop and trying to get it fixed, and they find the body. Like that's actually the real situation. That's the real scenario. That's what actually happened. Because otherwise, why have a bleeding phone? It's just these writers I think they were drunk. I think these writers were blackout drunk when they were writing this shit. And the cast, it's not a total train wreck. It isn't. Like, it's the performances, they're not, what I would consider to be a car crash. I mean, Laura Breckenridge, I actually thought did a pretty decent job as Mary. It was a performance that had a lot of nuance, a lot of different layers to it. I thought it was actually kind of endearing and charming when it comes to her doing the sing-along to Float On. She was definitely the best performer out of anyone in the cast. Kevin Corrigan as Emser, due to just how poorly that character was written, I I don't really have a lot to say about it, but I will have to admit this. When he was trying to be intimidating, like, it didn't work. It came across like a really bad, like, WCW TNA wrestler character who's trying to be creepy and intimidating, and it's just the opposite. It was like Mary had a little lamb, and especially him. Oh, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna make you pay. Oh, and he's like grunting and going, he's got false teeth. It was just ridiculous to me. It wasn't scary. It was more ridiculous than anything else. And Christopher Shand as Rick, he effectively gave me douche chills, so he did his job. His character was supposed to be a typical douchey boyfriend. Nailed it. He totally nailed that performance. And that's really about it in terms of actors who have really any major screen time. And Megan Anderson plays Jane, Emser's wife, but she was fine, but that's really about it. And the cinematography by Olivier Coquel, it's pretty bad. The cinematography isn't good either. There's a lot of moments in this film where it is just shot so poorly. I don't know if it's the director or the cinematographer or both. There's multiple scenes where you can barely see anything. Like a lot of shots in the dark garage that barely have any lighting. Then you have moments that are lit in ways that make it look really fucking cheap. Like, I'm talking like bargain basement cheap in terms of the budget. And it did not cost that kind of amount of money. Like, it was not that kind of film that was ultra low budget. Like, at times it looked like a student film when it comes to the way that certain scenes were lit and the way they used the camera. It was honestly surprisingly amateurish, despite the fact that there were certain shots that actually looked the complete opposite. There's some shots that look pretty good. Then there's other shots where you're like, I can't see shit, and why is it lit this way? And what is going on? And then you have the editing by Miklos Wright, which is more of the same. Most of the time, it's not right. Most of the time, it's the complete opposite. It's wrong because there's a lot of times where the POV is off, the perspective is off. There's a quick cut that just makes you go, what? And there's other moments where you're like, why is there a split screen effect? This adds nothing to the scene that is just a boyfriend and girlfriend talking over the phone. Like, why is there a split screen? There's no reason for the split screen. It's just there because. And then there's like a wipe effect that they use for the edit, which I'm like, did you use Windows Movie Maker to edit this shit? Used one of those like page flip things, or like, it looked terrible. It looked really bad. And then the music by Matt Messina is a mess. A bunch of random noises and maybe a little bit of synth, maybe a little bit of rock, a little bit of orchestral stuff. Nothing really fit together that well. Wasn't really that memorable when you did hear the music and didn't completely tune it out. And I would say the best parts are like some licensed music, like Float On. That's a pretty fun song. It's kind of fun to hear that. Other than that, can't really say a whole lot about the music for the movie. And it's like 84 minutes, but it still drags. It still drags despite it being so short, because you don't really get that invested in the plot, because you don't really get into the Emser stuff until way later into the story. And when that does happen, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't fit together with everything that happened before. You're frustrated at the lead girl, Mary, for making stupid decisions. You don't like the stuff with her and her boyfriend because the boyfriend's a douche. Then you get to the stuff where Emser is somehow alive and is going after her, and you're like, okay, but that could be something. But then they undermine it with the ending, and then you're just like, okay, all right. I feel like I have whiplash, like I was in a car accident watching this movie, because it's such a wreck of a film. But like I said, I have seen worse. That's why this is not an epic rant, but this was still bad. And I definitely would not recommend this unless you're a huge Laura Breckenridge fan. Avoid this drinking and driving horror thriller. It seems like it was directed and written by somebody who was plastered in 3 sheets to the fucking wind. But anyway, that's my rant and review of Hit and Run. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.